mind, what are you reporting?
Hi, there's a person who's been stalking me online, and they just showed up to my house.
Okay, and they're outside now?
Yes, they're knocking on my door.
Okay. And do you know if they have any weapons?
They have a bunch of camera people, like they're YouTube stalkers.
Okay, but no weapons seen?
I didn't see any weapons. I just saw like 6 guys in my driveway, and one of them is knocking on my door.
No funny intro today. We're getting right to the point. One of the most requested follow-up videos I've had hands down has been Chris Hansen. There's been quite a lot happen in the last 5 months. A couple funny things, some very serious allegations, and a whole boatload of controversy. There's a very complex and interesting situation that has developed around Chris Hansen and Onision as of late. And by the looks of it, it's coming to its boiling point very soon.
You may have heard that Onision, aka Gregory Jackson, aka James Jackson, put together a little legal complaint on his own, didn't use any lawyers, and marched it off to the local courthouse near his home in Washington State. He filed it. He apparently claims that another YouTube streamer, Repsian, and I have been mean to him. He wants a personal protection order. Good luck with that. My lawyers, including Mike Morse, have looked at it and they're unconcerned.
This subject has become one of the most emotionally charged topics I've seen online in a long time, and there's tons of confusion, assumptions, and misconceptions flying around. Today we're going to be talking about the last 5 months of Chris Hansen's emergence on YouTube, from his time in the IRL community all the way to his feud with Onision, and every controversy in between. We're going to take a deep look into what has led us to this point, and try to clear up some of the confusion that's developed along the way, so people generally have a better understanding of what to expect. We have a lot to unpack here, so grab your popcorn because we're in for the long haul tonight. Hansen has without a doubt been one busy beaver over the last few months. So in the last video in which I covered Hansen, we talked about the history and legacy of To Catch a Predator, the controversy the show faced along the way, Chris's own struggles, and his resurgence on the internet over the last couple years. One of the main issues I brought up was in regards to how Chris and Vince dealt with the criticism from the TCAP and YouTube community. There was a series of events that led to the TCAP or To Catch a Predator community feuding online with Hansen. Long story short, after a series of letdowns like content paywalls and broken promises, the community started to sour and question Chris and Vince, and present them with very valid criticism and concerns regarding a number of topics ranging from undelivered merchandise and Kickstarter perks, ludicrous website subscriptions, and undelivered content. It all snowballed from there, and it all came to a climax last summer when Chris was re-uploading videos from another channel. The two of them had a personal disagreement, which resulted in both parties filing false DMC takedowns on each other's videos. Yap Yap struck one of Chris's videos he had re-uploaded from her channel. Chris in return struck down her whole channel. The bad situation turned worse when Vince and Chris started striking hundreds of TCAP videos from any channel they could. Chris and Vince then proceeded to dox Yap Yap on Reddit and strike down multiple channels to cover up this week-long charade. Things weren't looking very good, but they were salvageable, and after public pressure, Vince and Chris removed the strikes, and all parties eventually went their separate ways. Chris admitted it was a bad move to false strike channels, he said he wasn't going to do it again, and everyone was generally satisfied for the most part. Hansen even seemed to learn and improve from this. He took a break, came back rejuvenated with a new and improved appropriate format, a mixture of video podcasting and live streaming interviews. At first it was hit or miss with the quality. Some were borderline unwatchable, but Chris and Vince did start to slowly improve. It was actually refreshing and nice seeing Hansen get back into the game. The format they devised was simple but effective. Chris and Vince would form a show on a topic suggested by the viewers. They would spend a large segment of the show taking and answering questions from the chat. I actually enjoyed Chris's video he did on Lisa Lam. It was definitely interesting, but there wasn't a lot of draw. That would quickly change though. In late August of last year, Hansen would get his first big story involving another YouTuber, Only Use Me Blade. Blade is a prominent member of the IRL community on YouTube. Last summer, Blade and a few other live streamers banded together and bought an RV to stream from. The idea was to get an RV, get an interesting cast of streamers, and travel from city to city while live streaming the whole trip. The trip itself was full of drunken hilarity, piss-stained pants, and truckloads of controversy. Along the way, the RV picked up a smaller streamer named Gucci's, and that's when things really took a dark turn. While live streaming to thousands of people, a drunken Blade asked Bajorn permission to go back and sleep with Gucci's, who at the time was highly intoxicated and sleeping alone in the RV bedroom. Blade then went back to the RV and crawled in bed with her, and people lost their minds, and rightfully so. It looked very bad from the clips. I believe Mr. Mediker even covered it in a stream right after it happened.
Okay, that right there is some shady shit. This dude knows there's a camera watching him. So he says he has to use the bathroom. And then he uses the bathroom door to block off the back room so he thinks you can't see him.
Weatherman have weird hours. There were actually a few huge YouTubers that actually made videos about this. Critical's video has over 1 million views in this incident. There was a massive flood of people talking about this. And in the days preceding the incident, it actually looked like there was a chance of Gucci's pressing charges on Blade. After being alerted to the situation, Hansen decided to take a closer look into the world of IRL streamers, and reached out to Blade for an interview to get his side of the developing story. And after a quick little prep talk with Keemstar, Blade actually agreed to have a seat, and Hansen was able to secure an interview days after the incident.
Did you sexually assault or inappropriately touch Gucci's Jessica?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I did not touch her in that bed at all. I'm not a racist, but sometimes I say like the N-word or I say something super offensive to women when I'm in that mode.
Did you say, whether you were drunk or not, something to the effect of, have you ever been raped? You should be. Or something to the effect of, you seem rapeable.
There are clips of me saying that. I can't deny that, yes.
Let's talk for a minute about this stream where you look like you've been drinking. No secret there. You talked about that. You're holding a dog.
Okay.
At some point, you toss this dog.
Correct.
And it looks like in the video, it's a pretty aggressive toss. It looks like you're abusing that animal.
Yes.
Why would you do that to an innocent dog? And again, I'll preface this by saying I'm a dog lover. I understand roughhousing with an animal, but this was more than that. Based upon my viewing of the video a number of times, you threw this dog across the room, and obviously, when you do that to a dog, you're going to ignite a storm of backlash there. I mean, for good reason. It's animal abuse.
I have absolutely zero excuse for that. That was fucking horrific. There is a Bjorn. I need you to go away, dude.
It's a shame this gem is gone now, because it was actually a pretty good interview. Hansen is a good interviewer, you can't take that away from him. He excels at applying subtle pressure without sacrificing rapport. It was also entertaining to see Chris asking questions about meme culture and his reaction to a drunken Bjorn.
Talk to him.
Hello, Chris Hansen.
Hello, Bjorn. How are you?
I'm doing very good.
Bjorn, he wanted to ask you why you were talking a lot of shit to him today.
Bjorn, you seem to have an issue with me, and all I'm trying to do is do a straight-up fair story here.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, but your last name is Hansen?
Yes, it is.
But that's a Scandinavian name.
It's Danish, actually. I assume Bjorn is, too.
He's from Denmark.
I'm from Denmark.
Right. So are my people.
Are you fake?
Am I fake? No, I have Danish blood. Hansen.
Are you American or not American?
I was born here in the United States, but my
but your last name is not American.
Okay.
Okay, that's it for Bjorn. Thank you, Bjorn. Now I think I understand a little bit more about Bjorn. Now,
once this interview popped off, Hansen got a flood of suggestions to look at other streamers. Tons of names were being thrown at him: Onision, Sam Pepper. But ultimately, fate stepped in and produced another controversy almost immediately, involving another large YouTube streamer, Ice Poseidon. At the end of the summer, a lot of accusations were being thrown around towards Ice Poseidon, accusing him of predatory behavior and talking inappropriately with a young girl who appeared to be underage. All of this came to people's attention when Ice accidentally showed his Discord chat logs with a person named Strawberry Vision by accident on live stream. He showed them for a split second, but it was enough for someone to snag a screenshot and take a closer look. Coincidentally, the name Strawberry Vision was also linked to a 13-year-old stream sniper that Ice met in Japan, leading people to believe that they were the same person. Memology covered this heavily in a video and on a live stream, which led to another large amount of people hearing about this. Right now, his video sits at about 200,000 views, and the evidence he presents in it is very compelling and definitely raises a lot of questions in people's eyes. Ice, like Hansen's current target Onision, both draw a lot of conflicting opinions out of people. Ice Poseidon isn't as hated as Greg, but there are similarities. They both have large fan bases, they both have massive amounts of detractors, they both have very serious allegations thrown at them, and they both always manage to find themselves in controversy. Once word got out that Chris Hansen was taking a closer look into Ice Poseidon, a lot of anticipation started to build with the public.
Ice Poseidon, modern day streaming shock jock, or is there something more disturbing going on Discord? Check out my live show Wednesday, 8 Eastern on my YouTube channel, Hansen vs. Predators. Alright, I'll be watching.
Ice Poseidon tried to play it off like he wasn't worried, but you could tell he was uncomfortable with the idea of being interviewed like Blade was. Seeing Hansen tackle this Discord craziness was grabbing a lot of people's attention, and all eyes were on him as he prepared for his upcoming dive into the Ice Poseidon allegations. But when the time came, instead of getting a deep dive that answered any questions, we got this.
Hey guys, Chris Hansen here. I just did an entire live program that you did not see on my YouTube channel here, Hansen versus Predators. I think there was a hacking issue and some other technical difficulties. The topic, Ice Poseidon. We had some clips of Ice's that I played and commented on. We also talked about a conversation I had earlier today with Ice, which was, pretty straight up and forward. He did not want to appear on tonight's show for a number of different reasons, but he was very honest that he was changing directions a little bit with his content. And he thought that maybe he was going to get a hard time from some of the people in the subreddit community and on Discord. He's already been the target of a lot of swatting and a lot of abuse and allegations. Obviously, Ice has been criticized for different things, including language involving underage girls, commenting on news clips where a 9-year-old was coached into undressing by someone online, saying it was her fault. There's a video floating around of him allegedly, dancing around with a 14-year-old girl, a girl who says she's 14, and talk of young girls in general, and 12 is the new 18. So all of that being said, the question is, does he just do this for shock value and subscribers and viewers? I think that's probably a big part of it. Does any of it cross the line taste-wise? I don't get it. I don't like it, but I don't have to. It's his First Amendment right to do things like that. And I really want to explore this further. So what I'm going to do is we're going to figure out how we got hacked, what happened. We're going to figure out a way to play the videos in the next show, and Vincent and I are going to sit down and go through all that right now. And again, I apologize for the technical issues, whether they were hackers or something that we haven't figured out yet. But we are live now. I guess we could probably take some questions, but I really feel bad about having done the whole show with video clips that based upon the way we got back on the air here cannot be played right now.
This was a very strange live stream. So Chris and Vince proceeded to go live and look over the evidence. They did a whole live stream, but it didn't show up because they were apparently hacked. Then the hacker just stopped and let them live stream right afterwards, but for some unknown reason, they can't show any clips or look into Ice Poseidon anymore. I tried to wrap my head around this episode many times, and it just doesn't make any sense, frankly. Right off the bat, Vince or Chris would have realized there was an issue. Because their live streams are chat orientated with constant audience feedback, they would have noticed an empty chat. Whatever, let's just say I'm looking into this a little too much. Let's say some hacker did hack them and fooled them into doing a whole live show without anyone being able to see it. Why didn't they just go over the clips once the hack was resolved? See, no matter how you really look at this, it doesn't make sense. Don't worry though, in the end it's okay, because Hansen actually talked to Ice on the phone beforehand, and he got to the bottom of this, so we shouldn't worry at all.
Again, my gut here after talking to Ice and after watching a lot of these videos is that he is, kind of what Howard Stern was 30 years ago. He does shocking stuff or things that get people's attention, and that's why they watch, view, subscribe, and donate. And so people live this life with him. He likes to go on the streets and sometimes be outrageous. So when you say 12 is the new 18, you're gonna draw some controversy. And look, let's just be real. The environment on Discord subreddit is such that anybody can make any allegation at any time. Now, I've looked at these videos. I'm offended by some of them. I would never do what he does, but I'm not that guy. I do a whole different thing. So, you be the judge.
With him being like Howard Stern 30 years ago, does this mean he could still be very inappropriate to all ages?
No, I'm not. Again, the question is, the analogy with him being Howard Stern 30 years ago, does that mean it's okay for him acting inappropriate to underage girls? No, it's not okay. I don't like it. I don't understand it. I don't condone it. I think it's creepy, and I think it's wrong.
And I think it's borderline predator-like behavior. But has he taken it to a level of breaking the law? And I've not seen that evidence.
As you can imagine, this stream left a bit of a horrible taste in people's mouths. I'm not gonna lie, it didn't really make any sense to me and still doesn't. And it definitely didn't help that Ice was joking about paying off Chris Hansen.
This fucking guy, dude. This fucking guy, bro. Hey, listen, Chris, how about this? I know you are trying to grow your YouTube channel and get motherfucking become a streamer or whatever I have no idea. How about this? Why don't you come to Europe with me? Then you can really understand who I really am and what I do. All right, we got a nice comfy bunk bed for you right in the trip. All right, I know you're in debt a little bit with, I don't know, whatever you got arrested for scamming mugs or something. So, bro, we can pay that off. Come on the trip. Or I don't know, you got arrested for like, I don't know, not paying for his merch or something like that. I really have no idea, but I don't know, bro. If you're trying to pay the mugs off, bro, I got you. Don't worry. Come on the trip. Listen, we can take him and go to Amsterdam. We can see what's going on with the sex trafficking over there. Make a real story, bro. Instead of talking about Discord and nonsense.
I've seen some people speculate that Ice and Chris talked prior to the hacking incident and that some kind of deal was cut. And that's why Chris Hansen was acting really strange and moved on from the Ice Poseidon topic immediately. As much as it pains me to defend Ice or Hansen, I don't think Ice Poseidon bribed Hansen. The hacking was definitely a lie, and Hansen made it 100 times worse by ignoring the issue and banning any mention of it in future live streams, but I doubt there was bribing going on there. Now, mutual gain, on the other hand, that's a different story. What I think happened was Ice talked to Hansen, told him about the rampant trolling culture in IRL and streaming in general, which Hansen and Vince have seen to a lesser degree, and convinced them that this whole Strawberry Vision controversy is the result of toxic detractors and trolling culture. And together the two of them just agreed it would be more beneficial for both of them to take the increase in exposure and put it all behind them in a civil manner. The fake hacking was just used as an excuse to avoid going through the clips. That way it'd be easy to move past this event without arousing too much public speculation. Ice wins because Hansen looked into it and gave him a clear. Hansen wins because the exposure from the IRL community and IP Live. That's the only logical conclusion I can really come to, but at the end of the day, that's just an educated guess, and the only people who know for certain are Ice and Hansen. Even though Hansen alluded to a possible follow-up interview with Ice in the future,
I think he's going to do an interview with me or some sort of collaboration and dig a little deeper into that world. I can't promise you it's going to be, this week, but now that we're going to redo this show and get a little deeper into it, I'll give him that opportunity, obviously. So, and again, we had a good chat today.
It never came, but Chris didn't stray too far from the IRL community. There was still some interest there, so 3 weeks later, he had another interview lined up with a small streamer named Corinne Forever.
Hey, listen, do your kids ever watch you stream, Corinne?
Probably, yes. But I don't ask them to. They're very busy with their homework. They have to get into Ivy League schools. They have a lot of pressure.
I don't want
to talk about minors. We're not talking about minors, Chris.
No, I know, but I'm just
follow your own rule. Don't ask me about minors.
I understand that, but what do they have a take on this? What do they think about their mom?
Chris, do not ask me about minor children ever. Sorry, sir.
Whoever made this interview happen is either a complete idiot or low-key the greatest troll alive. Unfortunately, it's another gem that's been purged from the net. After Corinne Forever experience, Hansen had one last small IRL streamer on, a female streamer named Egyptian Beauty. She's an old cam model from My Free Cams that somehow found her way into the world of YouTube IRL streaming. She became acquainted with Blade and Bjorn near the end of their RV trip, and Hansen decided to have her on for a chat about her experience in the IRL community in general.
Blade, let me tell you something about Blade. Blade,
wait, let me interrupt you for a second. Chris, I just got word that Only Use Me Blade is restreaming this show on his channel as we speak.
I told you that in the beginning. Hey, Blade, pay me back my money, man. I shouldn't have had to pay Bjorn for the airplane ticket. You better give me back my money. I'm not playing, Blade.
I miss these sloppy Hansen interviews from a few months back. I got a thing for unintentional comedy, but to anyone who was following this a few months ago, it was clear that Hansen and Vince were starting to miss the target a little bit. Hansen's a trooper though, or he's just lucky, I'm not sure yet. But either way, just when it seemed like he was doomed to spend eternity in this rut of interviewing anyone with a pulse, he hit the jackpot when people started blowing up his timeline on Twitter in regards to Jessica Yaniv and Blaire White. It was only a matter of time before they contacted each other for a friendly interview about Blaire's recent drama. The Blaire White interview was single-handedly the biggest shift. That was Hansen's saving grace on YouTube. Before that Blaire White interview, Chris's channel was starting to stagnate in growth, and a large percentage of his active viewer base was built from the TCAP and IRL communities, both of which were starting to lose interest and faith in Hansen. When the Blaire White interview happened, it brought in a massive and radically different audience to the table. There was a whole side of the internet that had no idea Chris was even on YouTube, let alone his previous dealings. It was like a second chance, redemption. The interview itself, there was nothing really groundbreaking in it as far as what was revealed, but near the end, Chris was asking Blaire her opinions on a few YouTubers. One was Sam Pepper, and the other was Onision. And Blaire White had quite a bit to say about Greg.
I mean, I think, honestly, if there's any channel that I would actually support and enjoy being banned, it is Onision. Let's keep it real. I think that if you're using your channel to prey on underage girls, that's a channel that probably should be banned. A lot of the people we're talking about here, you know, the Onisions and whatever, they do a lot of things that are awful, predatory, creepy, whatever, but they know how to skate the line and not explicitly break the law. So I think that's what we have to deal with him, is that he's a creep, but he's not a stupid creep.
Hey, Blaire, here's a question for you. Have you heard of this fellow Sam Pepper?
Yeah, that was another YouTube rapist, right?
Well, I don't know if there was actually a criminal rape prosecution there, but I get so many people asking about that, and I guess he's over in the UK. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah.
All right, listen.
Well, I got one more.
Okay, go ahead, Vince.
This is a pure opinion, Blaire.
Okay.
Do you believe that Onision and K will be deplatformed?
I think if there's ever a conviction, then yes. If not, probably not.
So there's got to be a conviction. I mean, we're out there, dealing with issues every week that, seem inane in some respects. Yet, here's a couple doing this online, and you think it would take actual criminal charges before they'd be deplatformed on YouTube?
I think so. I mean, just based on the past with the Austin Jones or whatever, that's what happened with him. So.
Right.
The entire interview was extremely well received by the new audience and built the foundation for the current situation now. Chris created a new channel, Have a Seat with Chris Hansen. He moved his interview with Blaire White over there, and he started completely fresh. He followed up his Blaire White interview with Repsion, and Repsion was able to give him a great idea of who Onision is.
One of the things we got into last week, and we'll talk about all this YouTube craziness in a minute, but one of the things we got into last week with a guest named Blaire White, who was tremendous and had some insight into a lot of areas of the streaming community, including a fellow we've been focusing on who goes by the name Onision, whose real name apparently is Greg Jackson, although he's got aliases. The allegations of grooming, inappropriate sexual behavior with minors are numerous. We invited him to be on the show last week. He said he would only appear if we paid him $350,000. And then he said, if we talk about him or Blaire White, last week's guest, references him in any way, he would sue our shoe. Well, I presume that was a misspelling of show, but he said shoe. So while I have some expensive shoes, none of them are worth it. What is the deal with Onision? How did he get on your radar, and why have you been dogging him so hard?
And once again, this interview was extremely well received. If Blaire White was the catalyst that started this fire, Dan was the fuel that kept it going. Because Repsion is one of the content creators on this platform that knows Greg very well. He's got a master's in Gregology. He's made countless videos over the years exposing different aspects of Onision's life, and is without a doubt one of the more prominent names in the anti-Onision movement, without being directly tied to it. And from his time covering Greg, he was able to point Hansen in the best direction.
Well, I know of two victims, and they're probably people known to you who want to go ahead and pursue criminal charges, who are going to reach out to me and to Vincent as early as tomorrow, and have been fearful of raising these issues with law enforcement because of all the reasons that victims of sexual assault and predator behavior are. So we're going to listen closely and do what we can to help them. And if it's ethical and reasonable, we'll help facilitate that. And we want to hear their voice on this program as well. So
yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
That's what needs to happen here. What do you think about that?
It absolutely does need to happen, because he has silenced so many people and used his fear-mongering tactics of, I'm going to sue you, or if you talk about me or anything I did or anything in our relationship, I'm going to release it publicly, which is he's done. He's done that to multiple different women, of releasing very private, intimate details about things that the internet shouldn't even know about. Things that don't even pertain to him, but other people in those relationships that you just blast out to the internet. And releasing personal information. And there's been several videos of several of his victims that have made videos after his abuse and what they went through, and them literally having mental breakdowns on YouTube from what they endured being associated with him.
The Blaire White and Repzion interviews did two things: bring in a brand new supportive audience and supplied a safe environment for potential victims to come forth. And it wasn't long before they decided to start sharing their experiences. First, Chris had on a young woman named Sarah. Sarah's story is extremely troubling and shows how disgusting and complicated this whole situation is.
So they both essentially lured you into a relationship. Is that fair to say?
Oh yeah, Greg was like how do I put it? He, for the whole relationship part, at least the second time around when I was about to be 18.
Right.
He was like the puppet master. He was being like, oh, you guys should do this. Oh, you guys should kiss. You guys should.
So he was, let's go back to the visit when you were 16, and we'll get to the 18-year-old visit in just a minute. But what happened during that visit when you were 16? How long did you actually stay with them?
So I stayed with them for about 5 days. I stayed with them for about 5 days, and then I came back like a month later, and then I stayed with them for 4 months.
4 months. And your mom knew that you were going to do this?
Yes.
And that was okay with her?
Yeah, she was like, oh, okay, you're just gonna go live out there. She gave me money every month to pay for whatever I needed. But she signed over power of attorney to Kai, and I lived with them.
Sarah revealed in her interview that when she was 16, Greg and Kai actually obtained legal guardianship of her, and as soon as she turned 18, Greg and Kai turned their parental relationship into a sexual relationship, and then just decided to kick her out once people started to notice and ask questions. After Sarah, Hansen had on Shiloh. Shiloh also had an extremely messed up experience with Greg. Shiloh and Greg met years ago while Greg was still married to his first wife, Sky. Shiloh reached out to Greg after watching some of his videos, and they quickly started talking and they became close. After a few months, they decided to meet. While Shiloh was on tour in the States, she was 17 at the time. Greg rented a hotel room in Pennsylvania for the two of them, and they immediately started an intimate relationship.
He made his way to PA. Before he made his way there, he had explained to me that we could get in a lot of trouble.
Into a lot of trouble.
Yeah, he explained to me we could get in a lot of trouble, and then he had to check the state laws before he came.
Because of your age?
Because he knew we were going to sleep together, and we had spoken about that. And so when he did his research, he informed me that the legal age in Pennsylvania at the time was 16.
16. So he would not be breaking the law if, in fact, the two of you slept together and had relations.
Right, and I had just freshly turned 17.
Greg told her he was divorcing his wife Sky for her and he wanted to be with her. And during their initial meetup in Pennsylvania, the hotel actually called the police while the two of them were in the room because of sheer suspicion. Shiloh was young, she's very small stature, I think she's around 5 feet tall. That probably looked very damning for a grown man with a bunch of computer equipment renting a hotel room with a young girl. Good job on that hotel. Unfortunately, due to consent laws in Pennsylvania, nothing actually happened. And once the police arrived, they contacted Shiloh's parents and sent her back to Canada. Greg actually followed her there, and they ended up getting a place together in Toronto, where they stayed till Shiloh was 18. And when she turned 18, they moved back to the States. Shiloh goes into great detail about her horrible situation she found herself in. Greg had her completely isolated from her family, where she was constantly facing emotional abuse and even physical danger.
Can't remember how it came about, but he had told me that he was into small-bodied Asian women, and that wasn't me, and that he couldn't pick me up while we were being intimate, so I had to lose weight, that I was clinically obese for my height. I'm 5 foot, and I think I was like 135 pounds. And so I had never felt that way before. And he left me crying, hyperventilating, actually, because I was very distraught. In the shower, he left me there. And things started to get really crazy. So, like, I felt all of these tingles in my face, and I'm really hyperventilating, and then I just kind of conked out in there. Now, in between the time of how I got from there to beside his desk, I'm not entirely sure. But that was a grand mal seizure from what I know. And it took memory from me. I woke up not knowing who he was. I had lost a good 3 years. And I've been having seizures ever since, to be really honest with you.
And did I get this right that he videoed the seizure?
He did.
And what did he do with it?
He put it on YouTube.
He put it on YouTube.
Yeah, he put it on YouTube. I guess asking people for advice. I remember being in the very hazy states afterwards and him asking me, you know, is this okay if I put it online so we could help people with this?
Help people?
Yeah.
Grand mal seizures are very, very serious. That's stuff you don't mess around with. And Greg, he just recorded it for views. And shockingly, that wasn't her only situation where Greg endangered her life. Near the end of the relationship, she became pregnant and suffered a miscarriage. Greg refused to bring her to the hospital because he didn't want to pay for it. She actually had to leave the States and go back to Canada just to get it addressed by a doctor. I don't get emotionally invested in things I have no control over, especially things from the internet, but Shiloh's story is one that stirs a lot of personal emotions with me. There's one point in this interview that the only way to describe it is it's heart-wrenching, and it shows how deep some of these wounds actually are.
What did he take from you?
Dignity. Not dignity that I haven't gotten back, but dignity, relationships. It's been very hard to make friends and have them not Google your name and see all of that shit and then have a whole bunch of questions as to, well, what kind of person are you? And it ruined relationships, friendships.
Did people look at you for a while and say you were damaged goods?
Yeah. Actually, it's really shocking that you say that because I had an ex-boyfriend.
I mean, I don't mean to say it it's reality, but to me...
It also shows a clear picture of how serious this issue is and how easy it is to get lost in the emotion of the situation. After Shiloh's very emotional story, Hansen continued his interviewing. The next 3 women Hansen had on as guests in the preceding weeks were a young woman named Regina, who was in contact with Kai, another girl named Billy, who was brought into Kai and Greg's relationship as a third wheel, and last Haley, another young woman who was pressured by Kai into becoming a potential third for her and Greg's polyamorous relationship. All 3 of those interviews bring up another highly controversial aspect of this situation. Kai, Greg's partner, and their predatory behavior. This is one of the strange things I've noticed. Some people, not everyone, but some people out there are giving Kai a pass and just focusing on Greg. I'm starting to notice a certain social phenomenon going on here. And I'm going to be real with you. I don't care what gender Kai wants to identify as. I don't care how fragile and innocent they appear to be. That means 0 to me, and it also means 0 to anyone with a law degree. What I do care about is the facts of the situation, and that Kai is a grown adult that allegedly exposed themselves to a 15-year-old Regina. 15-year-old that she was also talking to in a sexual manner. Yet the majority of the anti-Onision movement is more worried about misgendering Kai than holding Kai accountable for her part in this situation. That's just a little side note. Anyway, by this time anticipation is through the roof. By December, Chris was on a tear and he developed a solid routine of weekly interviews, each one giving people more information, more hope. There was even talks of FBI involvement, and Chris himself even alluded to being involved in an active federal investigation. At face value, it looked great. But behind the scenes, things started to take a weird turn. Good old Vince. So to fully grasp this mini controversy involving Vince, we have to understand the relationship between Chris and Vince. A lot of people are confused, Does Vince work for Chris? Are they partners? Who even is Vince? Well, a lot of people have asked these questions, and actually a lot of this stuff has already been addressed during the TCAP shit show that happened last summer, before all the Onision interviews. Vince did a number of early interviews with the TCAP community where he elaborated on the relationship he has with Hansen, and it's actually quite simple. Vince isn't paid by Hansen, he actually does this for free in a sense. It's less of a partnership and more of a symbiotic relationship. Hansen's a total boomer and needs someone to help him with technical aspects of the brand. Vince does a lot of number of things from tech support for streams. He answers emails from the Hansen vs. Predator website. Odds are if you've reached out to Chris through email, you've probably talked to Vince. He manages a number of Chris's accounts and is responsible for a lot of the behind the scenes work. In return for helping Chris, Vince gets to use Chris Hansen's name and platform to promote his own personal web services, one of which was a potential competitor for YouTube called ProStreams. This was advertised by Vince as a free speech alternative for content creators that was endorsed by Hansen. There have been a number of YouTubers who have come forth in the last month or so and talked about their personal experiences with Vince, and not all have been positive. There was some mild concern regarding Vince's professionalism on social media and in his private interactions with other creators regarding his website and his professional behavior. It wasn't necessarily deal-breaking stuff in my opinion. He did make some jokes that people took as offensive, and he did make some radical claims like Greg was on the run from federal agents. It's a number of small, sloppy mistakes that shouldn't even have happened to begin with. The issue got worse though once people started to publicly ask questions about it and then take a more critical look at Vince. Two of those people were Baked Salmon and another content creator, Wes. They both have had previous dealings with Vince in the past. They went through his website ProStreams and they discovered that the website was in fact ripped off from an already existing website and a number of other inconsistencies involving Vince's credibility. The two of them released a video exposing their findings at the end of December.
We're going to be talking about a couple of exciting things that are coming out to VEN's platform. I am in the final stages of building a do-it-yourself website builder.
Yeah, let's talk about your platform. That sounds impressive. You built a website builder. You didn't go use an existing website builder to build your website builder. Of course not. I mean, that would be ridiculous, right? You built a website builder. All the coding, the artwork, the templates, and it's all proprietary, right? I mean, you designed it all. Because that would be funny if you claimed to build this stuff only to find that you had lifted it from elsewhere on the web. We're not going to find that you lifted this content from elsewhere on the web, right? Schloopy?
Funny story about that video, I was sent the link for it on December 31st. I clicked it, seen the title, laughed to myself. The video is an hour long, it was late at night. I decided to leave it for the morning. Lo and behold, the very next day I clicked the link and bam, video and whole channel gone. False DMCAs with Hansen's name on them. Luckily, after I tweeted about this, Baked actually reached out to me to elaborate and supply me with a mirror of the video. The video in question will be in the comments. It's factual, filled with receipts, and well within fair use. There's no doubt about that. Instead of addressing any of the criticisms head on like an adult and clearing up any confusion, Vince jumped on Twitter, made a complete ass of himself by doxing two people from the TCAP community again. One was Yap Yap again, except this time he posted her picture, not just her name. And another one was Wes, the creator who helped Baked Salmon create the video exposing Vince's fraudulent websites. Vince then finished it off with deleting his account that the tweets were posted from. Not the best way to start the new year. Seeing as this went down publicly on social media, people started to look to Chris for answers, or even some kind of acknowledgement at least. Instead, they got 3 very vague tweets about the situation. By this time, a small segment of people are starting to doubt the credibility of Team Hansen as a whole. If you check the responses on Chris's tweets from the last couple weeks, they're either overly supportive or extremely critical of the situation. And rightfully so, it's starting to get a little weird, especially in the last month. Mr. GG worded this perfectly.
And he is only now publicly addressing it because his channel has grown substantially, and with the size of his audience, he can't ignore it. I think this is just damage control. A generic apology followed by Chris Hansen pretending to thoroughly examine who he's working with as if he doesn't know already. You guys should not be giving Vince a pass because you don't want to derail the Onision investigation. Because people not addressing this and continuing to allow Vince to be a loose cannon will be the ultimate derail to this investigation. But that's just my opinion.
Hansen has done a lot of good, but it's damn near impossible to fully support his endeavor when there's these shady business practices going on behind the scenes that are not being addressed. In reality, these are the exact same issues that causes Chris's original supporters to turn on him. Mr. GG released his video on December 8th. On December 9th, The whole issue with the public perception was elevated to new levels when Chris introduced his newest member of Team Hansen, lawyer Mike Morse. So Mike Morse, I know getting a lawyer involved is a good option here, and seeing as Chris knows Mike from outside of YouTube, and Mike is also a content creator with his own podcast, it only makes sense that Hansen would include him. It could only benefit the situation by having a lawyer involved, right? Surprisingly, no. Mike's inclusion in this situation has become one of the most recent controversies surrounding it, because just like Hansen and Vince, Mike himself has faced a shitload of controversy, and people are starting to notice and ask questions if it's the right move to really have him participate in this. In Chris's most recent live stream, there were tons of people asking about Mike and demanding answers. Super chats were being deleted, tons of accounts were being blocked, Hansen janitors were in full force. So what exactly is going on with Mike? Well, I'm just going to tell you the facts. The reason people are making a huge deal is because Mike Morse has some very damning accusations currently being thrown at him. Some very serious stuff. Right now in Michigan, State Farm, the insurance company, has a massive civil suit going on that's developing in court. It involves a pretty huge insurance fraud scheme. The lawsuit is huge, and it's been unfolding for a few years now. It's actually fairly complicated. The situation has many people involved in it, and it's also connected to a federal investigation that's currently going on. One of the men involved in this lawsuit is a longtime friend of Mike Morse's, Jason. Jason owned a company called Accident Information Bureau. His company collected information on people who were in car accidents so that they can seek them out and refer them to different lawyers or healthcare professionals. Except in some situations, they would obtain the information illegally by bribing police officers. Jason pleaded guilty and admitted in court in 2018 that he paid off 2 officers upwards of $300,000 to supply him with accident reports that were unapproved and weren't public. So in layman's terms, Jason was bribing cops to give him unapproved accident reports that he used to find people who were recently in accidents and refer them to various personal injury lawyers. Once the information came out that officers were being bribed, federal agents got involved, and they concluded that some of the illegally obtained police reports were sent to Mike Morse's law firm. Another man implicated in the State Farm civil suit was Mike's ex-brother-in-law. He's part owner of an MRI business called Horizon Imaging, and yes, over the years Mike Morse has referred his clients there. Coincidence, right? Where it gets sticky is the State Farm lawyers got a hold of an affidavit written by Mark's ex-wife during their divorce. A few years back, Mark and his wife were going through court proceedings for their divorce, and Mark was dead set on dealing with it out of court. When his ex-wife asked why, he claimed that it was because he didn't want the courts to find out about a bank account he had that he was in control of that had $3 million worth of profits from Horizon Imaging. And the reason why he didn't want anyone to know about it was because it was actually Mike Morse's account, along with the MRI center. The reason why it was in Mark's name was because it's a conflict of interest for Mike to run a law firm that sends people to an MRI center he also owns. So the alleged scheme went a little like this. Jason bribes the cops for accident reports. He finds the people in accidents before anyone else does, sends them to Mike's firm. Mike's firm sends them to Horizon Imaging for a bunch of overpriced tests. Those tests are covered by the insurance. Mark was the shell owner of Horizon, just so that Mike Morse wasn't directly connected to the healthcare facility and their profits. Now, this isn't proven. This is just a case State Farm is building. And as of right now, Mike is not included in the State Farm civil suit, but that looks like it's very well going to change because they're starting to build the case against him.
Devin, ever when it looks like when you have an insurance company going after an attorney and other people they claim were defrauding it? Well, this is just a small corner of the filings in this case that's now 2 years old. Mike Morse isn't even a defendant, but State Farm claims that they can tie him to it. Morse says, oh no, you can't.
Judge Anthony Petty, a U.S. magistrate, went on record and said, "It can be reasonably inferred from this evidence that Morse is at the very center of this scheme. He does appear to be, for all intents and purposes, on this pleading and on this record, the epitome of the unnamed co-conspirator." This is all still actively unfolding in court as we speak, but just remember, these are untried allegations. No, nothing big. There's more too.
A prominent local attorney is suing another, alleging that the sexual assault of a woman. Jeffrey Feiger is suing attorney Mike Morse on behalf of one of Feiger's clients. The lawsuit claims that Morse assaulted a woman at Lely's restaurant in Farmington Hills by grabbing her breast while they were taking a selfie. The woman reported the alleged crime to police. Tonight, Mike Morse is denying it all.
So in the last 3 years, 4 women have come forward and accused Mike of a range of things from sexual misconduct to sexual assault. 3 women were involved in a lawsuit against him. One of these was thrown out because the woman accusing him lied in a court of law about her personal life. All 3 looked like they were going to be thrown out actually. But the Michigan Appeals Court reinstated 2 of the sexual assault lawsuits against Mike. So at the moment, he's facing 2 lawsuits involving sexual assault. That's what he's been doing in his spare time when he's not messing around with Hansen. A lot of people have been coming across this information, and quite frankly, it's being met with some confusion and questions. Part of the appeal of Hansen's show was in fact the safe environment he supplied for the victims. And some are looking at this as a bit of a conflict. It's very strange that Hansen would team up with someone who faces very similar allegations as the person he's pursuing. I don't blame people for being sketched out about it, but at the end of the day, we have to be fair and hold allegations to the same standard. So at this moment in time, Mike is innocent until proven guilty. It's just facts. Until it's seen in court, he's innocent until proven guilty. He's innocent until proven guilty. Anyway, the one thing I can say for sure is that adding Mike to the mix without taking it in consideration is probably the worst PR move I've ever seen. And truth be told, I wouldn't expect Mike or Hansen to address it either. You have to understand it's ongoing in court, and Mike's also a lawyer, so he's not going to say a goddamn thing about it. You're just going to have to add it to that growing list of unanswered questions. Another huge topic directly related to this situation that adds another layer of complexity was when Chris and Mike showed up at Greg's house just days ago. That was interesting to see people react in real time. I wasn't really surprised. Hansen's got to keep momentum going somehow. He's got to keep people interested. Some think he shouldn't have went there, and I can understand that. I wouldn't do it, and I wouldn't promote it, but I'm not going to stop anyone. The only real issue I can see with it is I don't think it's best to do when there's kids in the house. Hansen can play it like he thought Greg was on the run and he had a small window, but that's theatrics. Everyone knew Greg was at home, and Hansen knew he wasn't going to talk to him, so he's kind of just stirring shit for a video clip. There is one thing though that does stand out to me, and that's the fact that Hansen went there with a film crew and not authorities, which solidifies to me that Chris isn't actually involved or working with the FBI, because they wouldn't let that fly if this was a full-fledged federal investigation. I will admit though, hearing Greg squeal on the phone was entertaining, but that's just clearly complicating things. Just a few days ago, on the 16th of January, Greg threatened to sue Hansen and Repsion. The irony of this situation is that as intense as it is, it's still nowhere near a conclusion. That powerful supportive mob that was built during these interviews is still here and it's still growing, but every one of these mini controversies instills a tiny bit of doubt in everybody's mind, and add to the growing amount of questions and concerns that continue to go unanswered. The anti-Onision movement was already very emotionally invested in this situation to begin with, well before Hansen came into the picture, but as soon as Hansen did hit the scene, that mob saw a clear and fast resolution, and sadly, that's just not going to be the case. And that's frustrating, and it's making people antsy, even resorting to the concept of deplatforming. I see a lot of people rally together and promote the idea that YouTube should step in and delete Onision, deplatform him. But I gotta be honest, this whole concept of deplatforming him off YouTube is something I personally don't support. And it has nothing to do with Onision. I'm just fundamentally against that concept altogether. To me, deplatforming someone is never the answer, even in a complicated situation like this. That's a door that should be left shut, because once it's open, you can't close it. Rallying to deplatform someone based off off-platform allegations that aren't tried in court is a waste of time and energy. Time and energy that could be spent more productively, like getting these victims in touch with proper resources, whether it be lawyers or social services, or just supplying them with the support and encouragement that they need. But that's getting lost in the whole mob mentality. I get where people are coming from. I get getting rid of Onision and wiping him from the net would be a momentary win, but this way of dealing with the issue is problematic in the long run, and it doesn't solve the issue, it just puts it out of sight. There's one last thing I'd like to touch on, and that's the idea of an open investigation on Greg and some of the public misconceptions out there. People have called and reported Greg to the authorities countless times. There have been CPS reports filed, and I believe Shiloh was actually in contact with the FBI recently, so there very well may be an Onision folder sitting somewhere in an FBI agent's office. It's probably right next to the Mumkey Jones folder, but that's way different than claiming there's an active federal investigation going on that you are in fact involved in to some degree. Let's think about this for a sec. There is no way in hell an FBI agent is going to risk his job or an investigation just to keep some washed up TV host with the IRS up his ass informed on an ongoing investigation, knowing that it's just going to end up on the internet for everyone to see. And that's because they have to keep the integrity of the investigation intact. They don't tell anyone any details because it could lead to the destruction of potential evidence to ruin the case. And they sure as shit aren't gonna let Chris Hansen and Vince potentially screw this up by going to Onision's house for a soundbite. This just complicates the situation from a legal standpoint. At best, the FBI is in the very beginning stages where they still are trying to establish whether or not a law was even broken. And it may not ever progress past this point. Sure, there's claims of grooming and emotional and physical abuse, and those may very well be real validated claims that need to be explored. But until Onision's prosecuted and tried in a court of law, nothing is guaranteed to come from this. I'm in no way trying to defend Onision, it's quite the opposite. The dude's a complete degenerate with clear predatory behavior that has damaged multiple women and left them with everlasting effects. Shiloh, for one, is visibly distraught and uncomfortable during the interview. And I bet the only reason she agreed was because she, like the other girls, like Blaire and Daniel, like this whole damn movement, all thought Hansen's inclusion in this situation would lead to something actually being done. And it's not that simple. I see a lot of people being set up for a massive letdown, and I have to be fair here, this buildup isn't all Hansen's fault in a sense. There was already a massive movement established before he even showed up, but because of who he is, or more accurately, who he was, his inclusion in this situation has really made people believe that it's finally going to be addressed by the law enforcement. But the real sad, harsh reality of the situation, as disgusting as Greg's manipulation and predatory behavior appears to be, that in itself is not an arrestable crime, let alone a federal offense. There has to be a law broken. For an example, in Greg's disgusting situation with Sarah, Greg and Kai became legal guardians of her when she was underage. But then in her own words, Greg didn't do anything inappropriate with her while she was underage. When she reached 18, the legal age of consent, the relationship became sexual. The general public's definition of grooming encompasses what Onision did. To everyone with common sense, that's messed up, without a doubt. But the legal definition of child grooming, the one that actually matters, falls under the federal enticement statute. And according to the definition, what Greg did in this situation wasn't against the law because there was nothing done to her while she was underage. Now, Kai, on the other hand, has been accused of sending illicit images to minors, but for some reason, they seem to be the lesser of the two that's focused on. These are some of the many complicated issues that plague this situation, and Chris and his team are adding fuel to the fire by promoting the idea of a quick resolution. It's one thing to bring awareness to a situation, but it becomes a different monster when you're just selling the public a false promise of justice for your own personal gain. And that seems to be what this whole shit show has ultimately become. Don't forget to grab your official pair of slippers. 100% of all proceeds go to Chris's pockets. Sadly, the only thing that's guaranteed in all this is Hansen's notorious lack of accountability. But this isn't just an issue that presents itself with Vince or Mike or Hansen. It's a fundamental Team Hansen issue. And there's no reason Chris shouldn't be held to the same standard as anyone else. See, I don't care what kind of grand mission you're trying to sell. When shit like this happens, there has to be some kind of accountability. And quite frankly, 3 tweets throwing Vince to the wolves doesn't cut it, because the fundamental problems that were raised are still present. And most importantly, Chris, the man in charge, is avoiding all the questions. The only thing I can really leave you with is what I think the best course of action would be for the girls involved in this situation that want justice. And I'm talking about real legal justice and resolution. Not this whole let's cancel Onision movement. That's a waste of energy. We shouldn't be deplatforming predators. We should be prosecuting predators. If Onision did these things he's accused of, you need to forget about having a seat with Chris Hansen, and they need to get together and have a seat with a lawyer and look into some insight into whether they have options legally as individuals or as a group. And I don't think the public generally understand that. Maybe I'm just talking up my ass. Greg's fate isn't up to Chris, or any other YouTuber for that matter, or any online mob. Unless some really incriminating evidence pops up in the near future that indicates the law was actually broken by Greg, there's only one way for this to escalate to the level people want it to, and that's if all accusing parties pursue it civilly. And in the end, it's not up to the mob, that's up to them. And that's a long battle with no guarantee. Sadly, Team Hansen has no bearing on whether or not investigation happens. Their hands are full pushing blame on each other, copyright striking videos while ambushing Onision for a soundbite. This whole situation with Hansen and Onision is a prime example of why YouTubers or internet personalities should leave alleged crimes of this nature up to professionals and not the court of online public appeal, because it overcomplicates the situation and muddies the water. Your average person, like say me, probably you, and even Chris, don't doubt it for a second, are nowhere near qualified to lead the charge against complicated potential abuse cases by blasting them on YouTube. That's the worst part in all this, really. It's one thing to spread awareness or report a story. There's nothing wrong with that. These girls are messed up from this situation, and some of them want some kind of resolution. And maybe sharing their story is enough for them to cope. I don't know, I'm not them. But regardless, it seems this whole dynamic has shifted away from seeking justice or spreading awareness to this merry-go-round of bullshit designed to capitalize off of exposure from the anti-Onision movement, while alluding to a conclusion that may not ever happen. And that's a shame because we're talking about some pretty serious topics here, like real-life accusations of serial grooming, patterns of abuse, and even with Kai, there's transfer of illicit images to minors. Not to mention, there's other factors like Greg and Kai's children being subject to this behind the scenes. These are all serious issues that without a doubt need to be dealt with in a professional manner. And I hate to say it, but as entertaining as it is seeing Hansen on YouTube, Chris and his team have shown themselves to be nothing but unprofessional in their actions, and actually come off as opportunistic at best. There's a clear cycle here of grifting from community to community by using Hansen's name to sell false promises for personal gain while avoiding all accountability. This is the third time we've seen it happen in 2 years. And I'm not talking about Chris's old stuff. Forget about that. I'm talking about recent stuff. First, Chris and Vince jumped into the TCAP community by throwing around promises of collaborations, future busts, and a much anticipated Lauren interview just to be met with website paywalls, used as an ATM for the better part of a year. Guess what happened when people asked questions? Well, that one ended in the damn near destruction of an entire online community through DMCA abuse. People let him pass. He's new to the internet. Okay, I'll play. Everybody gets one. But then there was the IRL community, where there was more massive demand for Hansen to go after predatory streamers and look into Ice Poseidon's Discord controversy. Once again, all the hype and nothing came from it but a fake hacking, complete avoidance, and even more questions. When asked about it, he just ignored it. Soon people forgot and moved on. But things didn't change. And now we're in Act 3, where Hansen's mainstream notoriety has paid off once again when Blaire White and Repsion gave him a doorway into the anti-Onision community, which accepted him with open arms. Just like both communities prior, it wasn't long before more pipe dreams and controversy come flooding in, more DMCA abuse, more unprofessionalism and shady business practices, excuses and lack of accountability. All of these situations were highly anticipated, but each just end the same, with Chris monetizing the movement for everything he can till the community eventually turns on him. And they turn on him because of consistent lack of accountability. You see this happening right now with the anti-Onision community. People are starting to ask questions and they're being met with avoidance and excuses. And to top it off, Hansen and his partner are back to participating in doxing, DMCA abuse, scam websites, all behind the scenes without zero accountability. And when I mean accountability, I'm talking about Hansen being honest and addressing these issues people are bringing up. Because if this was any other person besides Chris Hansen in this position, they'd be burned at the stake. And I know it's easy to look past things like false DMCAs, doxing contradictions. When you're dealing with cases of potential abuse, it's all peanuts on an individual basis, but all combined, it starts to paint a picture, a not so great picture, a picture that kind of paints Chris and this whole operation in a real opportunistic nature, and the longer things go without being addressed, the more that picture is going to solidify. Some people think because I made a video criticizing Hansen that I'm against him. It's actually the opposite. I like Hansen. I was a huge fan of the show. I was pumped when he came back. But we have to be real about the situation. Hansen is not in the same position he was back then. Hansen is not backed by networks. Hansen does not have the resources. Hansen, like every other normal person, has had his ups and downs. He's done shitty stuff. He's done great things. He's made money. He owes money. He's a talented interviewer and a compelling personality, but he has faults like everyone else, and he should be held accountable for his actions, just like everyone else would be. I don't want to cancel Chris or switch your opinion on him. That whole idea is retarded. That's not the point. I want Chris to succeed, and I 100% believe this situation is salvageable. But for that to happen, things need to be addressed, and some actions need to be corrected, and that won't happen unless the issues are brought up. It is impossible to support him in any way in this endeavor the way it's currently unfolding. And if I was a betting man, I'd have to say it's just a matter of time till this gets stale with the public, the super chats dry up, and people start to realize that there isn't going to be the conclusion they hoped. And that'll be when things get real interesting. Because I'll tell you one thing, people don't join a movement for nothing. They join a movement because they're emotionally invested and they want something done. And this entire situation has built an interesting dynamic where the people who follow it, they want blood. Mob mentality is emotional, and there's been a massive buildup. The people want a target. Right now, that's Onision and Kai. But that very well could shift. Because when people start realizing that the conclusion they hope for is far from a certainty, and at the end of the day they're left with more questions than answers, it's going to take a lot more than Vince to quench that mob's thirst. If I were Hansen, I'd start to clarify a few things with the public ASAP, because it would be a real shame if this whole situation and movement just turned out to be a stepping stone for one last hurrah on network television. That's not going to sit well. This just in. As I was uploading my video, there have been a few recent updates that I feel are relevant. In the last couple days, it was revealed on Twitter that Vince was in possession of 2 pieces of potential evidence. Chris and Vince told everyone, including Sarah, that they sent the evidence to the FBI. In reality, it was sitting in Vince's house. Why? Who knows? These two probably have no idea what to even do with it. This is exactly what I talked about in the video, about making the whole situation more complicated. A good defense lawyer will have a heyday knowing that these 2 idiots have potential evidence. There goes the integrity of that. Either way, Hansen's moderation team took it upon themselves, completely separate of Hansen, and made a public statement denouncing Vince on the 21st. The next day, on January 22nd, Hansen followed suit and fired Vince over Twitter, blaming him entirely for this screw-up. Typical, that's what a scapegoat's for. But pretty sad that it took his live stream moderators going public with their concerns for Chris to finally actually address it. Vince also just released screenshots showing that Hansen in fact may have known that Vince had the evidence. Vince was just waiting for further instructions from Hansen. I can't verify whether or not these screenshots are real, so take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, I'm not really surprised. This is the level of professionality that's been presenting itself from the start.
There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, "Fool me once, shame on you." If fool me, we can't get fooled again.